Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
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 How you doing, Jay? It's been a while. Kim?
Not as
Hi.
good as you.
Are we ready to get started?
I am.
Fantastic. All right. Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for joining us at this session, Emerging Solutions for Climate Change. My name is Ainsley Henry. I will be the moderator for this session. I am the CEO and Conservator for Forests for the Forestry Department and the former project manager for the Caribbean Regional Track. It's my pleasure to be here today, and thank you all for joining us. I am certain that today will be very interesting and fruitful for you all. I take it that all of the panelists have been given an indication of the amount of time that they have. I see that in total we're to spend 45 minutes, which means that none of the presentations should extend beyond 10 minutes to allow us about 15 minutes for questions and answers. That said, and so that we can jump straight into the meat of the matter, I will give you a brief overview of our first presenter. Our first presenter is Keith Owens. He's the Business Development and Marketing Manager for Fugro. Fugro is a geospatial geodata specialist company and the contractor for component one of the Caribbean Regional Track of the pilot program for climate resilience. Keith has over 25 years experience in remote sensing and mapping. He builds 3D mapping solutions that meet the highly technical product specifications required for emergency management, coastal zone monitoring, and flood protection. These activities unlock insights from geodata for a safe and livable world. Keith?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, and you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. Well, thank you for including Fugro in the discussion of emerging technologies for making better decisions on climate change programs. So Fugro has completed a coastal mapping project in Jamaica and Haiti. Oh, let's see here. There we go. So we had completed a project in Jamaica and Haiti to support the investment plan for the Caribbean Regional Track of the pilot program for climate resilience. We collected approximately 2,000 square kilometers of integrated shallow water and land-based elevation and imagery data for the University of West Indies at Mona, with financing from the Inter-American Development Bank. So Fugro deployed an aircraft with multiple sensors for capturing 3D geodata to assist with coastal zone monitoring and planning. The purpose of the 3D data is to accurately assist with modeling coastal zone and nearshore environments to help measure the impact of climate change along the coastline. It was also there to monitor coastal ecosystems that may be impacted by natural and human-caused events. This is basically a digital twin or a snapshot of the coastal zone at the time of data capture. So LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, is a pulsed laser to measure variable distances or ranges to the Earth. These laser pulses generate precise three-dimensional information about the shape of the Earth and its surface characteristics. For this project, we've captured both topographic and bathymetric LiDAR as well as imagery. So the topographic LiDAR was typically used as a near-infrared laser to map the land and onshore features. The bathymetric LiDAR uses water-penetrating green light to measure seafloor and riverbed elevations. Excuse me. So the sensor technology used was Fugro RAMs for shallow water bathymetric data and the Regal sensor for topographic LiDAR. The topographic LiDAR captures elevation data for modeling onshore natural features and human-made structures at a high degree of accuracy. In addition to the elevation data capture, Fugro collected concurrent aerial imagery for creating orthoimagery base maps and to colorize the LiDAR point cloud. So the project area was flown June, July, and August of 2019, as well as January and February of 2020. The total project area covering Jamaica and Haiti required about 479 flight lines and 4,492 line miles to capture the data. The lines are designed in a way to get complete coverage with no data gaps. And this is a similar approach you may take to mowing your lawn, which is multiple parallel lines with side lap to ensure complete coverage. So to prepare for this discussion, I gained access to the Jamaica LiDAR point cloud data near Port Antonio. This is located on the northeast section of the island. I converted the LiDAR point cloud from the standard LiDAR format to a streamable format known as CPT. This streamable format allows us to access the LiDAR point cloud faster and to better quality using a standard internet bandwidth. The data shown here is streamed via the cloud on Fugro's 3D GIS platform called Symmetry. So I was drawn to this peninsula, which I believe is the Titchfield High School. And as you can see, the LiDAR data is at a high enough point density to model the roof details, vegetation, human-made structures, the bare earth, and transportation features. The LiDAR data is colorized from the concurrent imagery to allow the users to better identify features from the cluster of LiDAR points. And the LiDAR point cloud can also be classified so that a select group of points will be tagged with a feature type. For example, building, vegetation, bare earth, water, culvert, and bridges. This helps with creating LiDAR-derived products like building footprints, vegetation height and density rasters, and bare earth digital elevation models, also known as a DEM. So when capturing these details, this gives the base information to which we can measure change, whether it be along a shoreline, a road network, a clump of vegetation, coastal cliffs, or berms. The elevation data allows us to peek back at the snapshot in time when it was captured and measure against the latest available data source for determining what has changed. For example, bare earth erosion or vegetation decline or human-built encroachment. By determining what has changed from the accurate geodata, we can measure the amount and location of that change to help us determine what impact it may have on the natural and human-built environment. So accessing the topographic and bathymetric point cloud data in 3D GIS platforms allows users to perform a series of analysis to help with documenting, measuring, analyzing, and simulating change. Common functionality in the 3D environment includes data comparison, vertical and horizontal measurements, area measurements, terrain profiles or cross sections, and shadow analysis. In this showcase, I'm able to peel away the water surface and access the nearshore subaquatic region. Utilizing the RAM sensor, we're able to penetrate the water surface by nearly 30 meters. So this promotes easy access to measuring canal depth, monitoring geomorphology, or mapping benthic habitat from the airborne data. So as I was navigating around Port Antonio, I was reading a report from the University of West Indies at Mona titled, "Will Sea Level Rise Drown Jamaica?" And in that report, they state the present day sea level rise averages about 2 millimeters annually in this part of the world. I was interested in seeing what a 2 millimeter per year sea level rise event would have on an area like Turtle Harbor. Because the accurate data exists, I'm able to simulate a sea level rise event of the harbor and identify potential risk areas or impacted structures. In this case, I simulated a 2 meter and a 6 meter static water level rise using the LiDAR point cloud as my base data for analysis. I believe this is a water level rise event over the next, say, 1,000 years, which is like 13 lifespans. And because we have the easy to access geodata, I'm able to quickly identify potentially at-risk areas. And this will help with planners or emergency management professionals make more informed decisions based on the accurate geodata. So while my experiment is a bit extreme, it demonstrates one example of the importance of geodata and the role it plays in climate change analysis. So geodata analysis using the clever tools or 3D GIS platforms like this expands the use of the collected data. It provides digital access to hard to reach areas at your desktop, assisting with making more informed decisions, which provides more value to the community and our natural environment. So when considering the impact of climate change on our community and the environment, consider building and managing recurring geodata programs that capture entire areas, both onshore and nearshore, for that primary data source as the 3D digital snapshot for that time. LiDAR data can be utilized as the primary data source for monitoring change, and with enough recurring data sets, maybe help with performing some predictive analysis. As the data becomes more common, the need for that non-GIS user to access the data is critical. This will allow decision makers the ability to make more informed decisions based on better data to help safeguard life or community and our natural environment. So while this was a quick review of the LiDAR technology and our LiDAR project in Jamaica, I'm happy to share more information on the subject. You're welcome to contact me via email, social media, or phone for additional details. So thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you very much, Keith. That was very, very interesting. Now, in the interest of time, we're going to go through all of the presentations and then we'll take the questions afterwards. I already see that at least one question has come in, but as I said, in the interest of time, we'll continue. So the next presenter is Kim Mallalieu. She is a senior lecturer and leader of the Communications System Group in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, where she is a past head of department and developer of the Masters in Telecommunications Regulation and Policy. Having coordinated its delivery to participants from over 30 developing countries around the world. As the leader of the ICT for Fisheries Consortium and principal investigator of the Caribbean ICT Research Program, Dr. Mallalieu is engaged in multidisciplinary action research on context-appropriate strategies for the purposeful application of information and communication technologies for human good. With an emphasis on building the resilience of underserved populations, she's a regular speaker, chair, and multi-channel contributor to international fora on topics related to development-focused technology, policy, and regulation. She is also a keen advocate for gender equality, for development, and she chairs the Network of Women for the Americas. In her different capacities, she has led national, regional, and international initiatives variously designed to build capacity in ICT, policy, regulation, development, application, and use. Dr. Mallalieu is also a Fulbright Scholar, Fellow, and the recipient of multiple local, regional, and international teaching and research awards, and is active in the service of her country and the region. On a lighter note, she is a licensed amateur radio user as well as a GMDSS short-range operator. Dr. Mallalieu.
Good morning. I am sharing my screen, and if I don't hear from you, I'll assume that you see. So this morning, it's a pleasure to be here, and my treatment of the emerging solutions for climate change is going to focus on fisheries. For this, we recognize that small island developing states are particularly vulnerable to weather and climate change, that the frequency and intensity of North Atlantic hurricanes has risen since 1970, that more than 2 million square kilometers of the 17 CRFM states is in fact ocean or sea, and that small-scale fishers are highly exposed. More than 90% of in excess of 30,000 vessels that ply the CRFM countries are below 12 meters in length. The Comprehensive Disaster Management Strategy for the Caribbean 2014 to 2024 includes an outcome to improve the effectiveness of comprehensive disaster management at the sector level. Understandably, the Caribbean fisheries sector is adopting national disaster risk management, DRM plans, and in alignment with not only global policy frameworks, the Caribbean ICT sector is prioritizing disaster risk management, while in fact the Caribbean disaster management strategy, comprehensive strategy, includes ICT, information and communication technologies, as a cross-cutting theme. This strategy also has a focus on vulnerable groups and the securing of lives and livelihoods of course, these vulnerable groups. We recognize that the UN, FAO, ILO, and IMO recommend that vessels less than 12 meters in length carry information and communication technologies on board. Of course, this is a legal requirement for vessels in excess of 12 meters, but it is not a legal requirement for those under. It is a recommendation of FAO, ILO, and IMO that these vessels carry ICTs. In the special case in which these vessels ply seas in which there is no VHF, DSC, that is radio coverage, then the recommendation is that these small-scale vessels carry a cell phone with them at all times. The carriage of a cell phone or other ICTs in a vessel during an emergency, during a disaster, is not adequate for the building of resilience. And what we are interested in is the building of resilience to climate change. In fact, it is that ICTs should be a constant companion through all phases of the disaster risk management cycle, that is to say, mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery. A resilient fisher is one who is vigilant, one who records and uses data, one who stays connected not only with family, but also colleague fishers and local authorities, one who manages risks every day. Under the PPCR, the ICT for Fisheries Consortium developed an application suite for the mobile phone for small-scale fishers. The focus was on the building of resilience specifically to climate change and, of course, weather. This suite is available as a native Android application, as well as a cross-platform PWA application. And it comprises modules for fishers to log, record, and refer to local knowledge, which is presumably mapped over time, to check the weather from multiple sources, including but not limited to the local authority, that is to say the Met Office, for fishers to refer to up-to-date emergency contacts, for them to report damage due to hurricanes and other weather-related incidents, for them to receive emergency alerts from authoritative sources, and also to construct and send and receive such alerts within local communities, for them to follow step-by-step emergency procedures, and also for the broadcast and contribution to the finding of missing persons. This Fisheries Early Warning and Emergency Response Suite, FEWA, also is built for administrators, that is to say local and regional administrators, for several modules in the suite require the administration by local authorities. The alerts, for example, is one such, missing persons is another. And this enables the administrators in key organizations to also draw on this data for very important sector and national planning. The fewer administrators are categorized as either local admins or global admins. Local admins are country administrators, agency administrators, and technical administrators. The agency administrators draw from the disaster management authorities, the fisheries authorities, and the Coast Guard. The global administrator is SEDIMA, and the regional reviewer is the CRFM. The administration of FEWA by the local and global level ensures the national and regional integration of multi-mode, multi-channel alerts using the UN approved and advocated common alerting protocol. How this is done is that FEWA supports the contribution of alerts from multiple agencies and agents, the Met Offices, the Coast Guard, fisheries authorities, etc., and gathers this data into the FEWA suite through a variety of channels, in particular, the use of application programming interfaces, the parsing of websites, direct entry through the FEWA app, and also the FEWA administrator's dashboard. FEWA information, including these alerts, is consumed by a variety of agents and agencies, the Met Offices, the Coast Guard, the fishers themselves, etc., through a number of different devices. The default is the FEWA PWA on any device, and the FEWA mobile app native on Android devices, and of course the FEWA admin dashboard on a PC. Other devices that could be supported depending on provisions in a local country are a marine band radio, a basic SMS phone, and electronic notice boards. The countries for which FEWA was built are Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada. My time is drawing to a close, so let me close with a couple of thoughts. One is that beyond the tech, fisher resilience, which is what we are after, requires that all agents play their role in the intersecting agendas of multiple sectors, which recognize the critical role of information and communications technologies in disaster risk management for the most vulnerable, in our case, small-scale fishers. Resilience also requires that all recognize that ICT is one of several components, and mobile, one of several ICT tools in a broader strategy that requires, inter alia, fishers' understanding of the risks and DRM mechanisms, the co-creation of solutions by fishers, fisherfolk organizations, fisheries authorities, Met Offices, disaster management agencies, the Coast Guard, etc., ongoing operations and operational support, relevant skills, and ongoing reinforcement. The ultimate goal at the center of our interest is resilience, building the resilience of small-scale fishers to climate change. So I will close by emphasizing that meaningful solutions recognize that technology does not solve problems on its own, that resilience requires behavior change, and that emerging solutions, which in turn require behavior change, compete with all priorities, distractions, resources, and demands for both fishers and agencies' attention. And with that, I will thank you and hand you back over to Ainsley.
All right, thank you very much, Kim. That was very interesting. I allowed the theft of 2 minutes from Jayaka's time because I know that he's usually very efficient and short. So without any further ado, the next presenter will be Jayaka D. Campbell. Jay, as he's affectionately known, is an assistant lecturer in the Department of Physics at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. He is a computational physicist with a focus on atmospheric sciences, more specifically, generation of regional climate modeling scenarios at scales relevant to the small sizes and complex terrain of the nations of the Caribbean and its neighbors. His research includes examining the impact of climate change and climate variability on the key economic drivers and social sectors, agriculture, water, health, etc., of the Caribbean. Like so many before him, JD credits his success to the support of his family, friends, and seemingly never-ending guidance of his mentors. Jay?
I am hoping you're seeing my screen. I will take that. All right, so I've been given 6 minutes to to actually try to brief you on high resolution climate data. Now, it would be remiss of me to do so, to just present a high resolution climate data without specifying the background for why it is needed. So first and foremost, let me say that I would outline why was it needed? Why is it only now, why is it only now being produced? And I'll detail some outputs and some tools that are there. Now, when we talk about the Caribbean, we're talking about this area. And I've chosen this larger area just because it will become very important in later slides. Now, we're talking about an area that has things on countries on a continent. We're talking about island land masses that are sometimes, not even a km, 1 kilometer wide. We're talking about larger land masses. So it represents a very diverse area. And as you saw in the first slide, you saw that data is already available from the global scale, and data was available at the global scale. However, here's a challenge. That area that is identified is what that area in red is typically confines all the nations of the Caribbean. But the problem with data being available from the global level is if you look where that little arrow is pointing right here, that is supposed to be where Barbados and all the islands are. And that is what was typically represented in a GCM or a global climate model. That's data that's available from the global level. So what typically occurred is that the models themselves treated the islands of the Caribbean as largely a swat of water. So therefore, the data that was available, you literally had to do additional things, make certain assumptions before you could actually use the data. And the change that was associated with one island, no matter the distance between them, was normally the same change that was associated with their near neighbor, even though they may have completely different climate regimes. So that is the challenge, and therein lies the need for the high resolution climate data. In an instance where you have a leeward facing slope and a windward facing slope, you know that there's going to be a difference in rainfall regime and temperature of the two slopes. And you don't want to have just one overarching change for the overall country. So therein lies what we deem to be the Caribbean, right? But before we got to the point of providing the high resolution runs, we had some limitations. And within those limitations, we tried to operate within those limitations. So whether due to computational resource or other storage resource constraints, we couldn't do anything that accounted for the Pacific influences on the Caribbean. We literally lost range where El Nino region was ignored, or hurricane developmental region. And much of the Caribbean's rainfall period is tied to June to November, which means that the passage of tropical storms or tropical waves has a large impact to do with how we get rainfall. And if you notice, no data for Ghana and Suriname was available. So we have to get to a point of actually accounting for that. So it's typically before we got to the point of producing this, and our first attempt at doing this meant that we largely missed those things. That was a typical domain, right? The experiments were at max at 25, and we really struggled to get the experiments at a max at 25 km. And it typically took 6 to 9 months to generate this data, right? And because of the resource constraint and the limitations on data, we typically had to share hard drives. Some runs were done in some countries, we partitioned the runs, and then we shared the data. And this data was only shared when we all met in a single place. So you're simply, the first day you meet the person, you're exchanging hard drives and you're copying data and you're waiting, you probably leave that running in the hotel room and you're off doing other things. And if it fails, you have to restart or hope the person can lose the drive for you to get the data, right? And it was limited to a 30-year time slice. So you couldn't do a continuous run. And if somebody was interested in data outside of your 30-year time slice, you'd have to now take that 5 to 9 months again. Only one experiment, and this was done on a desktop computer, right? And there's little to no redundancies. And in some instances, you're doing a run and hardware fails, technology fails, the machines fail, and hard drives fail, and you have to start that entire process all over. Now, globally, there is something called the coordinated domain experiment. And the large domain I showed you before is where the Caribbean exists. And all experiments done for that domain, they're hoping that persons will actually treat that domain so runs can be shared very easily. And the Caribbean, for the start of this, was largely ignored. And so we felt that there was a need to address this. And out of the PPCR project came SPARKS. And SPARKS, what's in a name? It stands for the Scientific Platform for Applied Research and Knowledge Sharing. And what it allowed for, given the fact that it was a high-performance computing cluster with 32 nodes operating at 15 teraflops, right? It had a GPU cluster as well, and it has over 880 terabytes of raw storage. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but here's what it allowed to happen. Larger domains, which were now Cortex compliant, we could now run experiments down to 4 km. And that is now the high resolution, getting towards the high resolution data that's needed. And there is no need for swapping hard drives. We could actually run 3 experiments simultaneously. And if we were to do the old domain that was being done before, this would be done in 2.1 days. All right? So that is the domain we ran. And what this domain facilitated was that if you now look, this is how it represented Barbados at a 25 km resolution. Right? And representing Barbados like that at a 25 km meant you could now discern east from west or north from south. So there is some change. And I chose Barbados because it happens to be one of the smaller islands within the region. Right? What it also facilitated is this wonderful thing. You could now, it enables the investigation of warming events within the domain at scales relevant to the region. So you could now literally look at how the region itself, and you're looking at Haiti or you're looking at the Caribbean domain, how that warming proceeds going from particular day to another day. And this data is available at the sub-daily level. So you could now look at a diurnal change. How is your day, your island or space warming in the day versus it's warming in the night. What it also enabled, and this was very well, because before you got to the point of doing these high resolution runs, it was very difficult to actually examine what we deem to be TC-like vortices, and you can call it hurricanes if you want to. And it allows for the examination. And here I'm just going to show you a little slice of some TC vortices forming and coming towards the region. And I'm going to wrap up in 90 seconds. I noticed the camera came back on, so I'm going to wrap up in 90 seconds. So there you have those little blue and red blobs you see scaling off. Those happen to be tropical waves or TC-like vortices. So it allowed for us to now examine hurricanes. And this is just raw output. This is not talking about the tools or the side applications or the tier 2 applications of the data that was generated. All right. Now, one of the main tools that we use is called CRESS, and it stands for the Caribbean Regional Ensemble Sharing Tool. If you were at my presentation yesterday, you'd have seen some of this already. And so I am going to very quickly go through this. As what was said is that we have countries there. And if you look at Haiti, number of grid boxes that Haiti is broken out into, all you have to do is select a country. You have the list of countries that are currently available there listed on the slide. You select a variable. There's temperature variables, rainfall variables, and in the process of adding other variables. And there's also extreme variables. You then, and we've listed some of the variables there. You can download the data which is georeference, to make your own plots if you need be. If this is not efficient enough for you, you select the bias correction period or your baseline period. You select the future period, and it generates the run for you. You can save the images as a PDF or a PNG, or you can download the data that's used to generate the map. right? And this is again for monthly values because it was easier to process the monthly values and make them available than to process the sub-hourly values to make them available, right? It also had one other use case, and that's it within agriculture. We saw yesterday from the presentation, a tool called Accept, and it takes the same future data, which is now at scales and can be spread right across the country, where you not just have one value for the entire data set, and it can be matched to the rainfall zone of the regions as well, to actually now give you an estimation of, is this area going to be favorable for planting XYZ crop in the future under climate change? Is it going to be, should I continue, plodding along with ginger? Should I continue plodding along with sweet potatoes in this area? Even though it may have been a sweet potato area historically, the future climate may not make it the same kind of area for that. So we've actually fed the data into those tools. And with that, I'm going to say thanks to the funders and the Climate Studies Group. And thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Jay. I think we can all agree that that was an interesting series of presentations. I will start first by sharing 3 questions that were asked and answers that were provided. The first was a question from Chevelle Vassell, who asked of Keith if what was presented was similar to QGIS. Keith answered that the Jamaica data shown in his presentation was using symmetry by Fugro, and that there's a free version of the software available for download. It's a 3D GIS system that can ingest most GIS data. And the purpose is to give easy access to complex data in a recognizable viewer and analysis tool. The second question was from David Clark, and he asked if there was an app for use to alert a disaster in our area. And Jean-Pierre answered there currently isn't one for Jamaica. However, the Common Alerting Protocol app exists and is supported in Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent. And the third question was from Lashala Kar, who said, very interesting presentations by all presenters, thank you. Her question was specifically for Kim, and she was asking if there are plans to extend fuel to other islands, and would a public-private partnership be considered to help collect the data and conduct stakeholder engagement activities. I had answered before Kim realized that the question was there. And so my answer was, while it wasn't directed to me, I was happy to advise that the entire purpose of the arrangement with SEDIMA is to facilitate the expansion of the fuel system to the entire region, as well as to ensure sustainability. Kim also answered to indicate that this year it has been extended to Barbados, Belize, and Jamaica, and we anticipate that there will be more to come. So keep your questions coming. We still have 8 minutes. With that in mind, I will ask of Keith a quick question while we wait for other questions to come in. Keith, what risks were identified in the mapping of coastal zone settlements, specifically for Jamaica and Haiti when you were doing the LiDAR?
So it's interesting with the LiDAR data, with the view that I had, I was able to kind of analyze both the topographic and the bathymetric data. So it gave me kind of that direct access to the structures or the coastal zone or coastal structures that maybe were at risk for kind of water level rise events. So from my view of the data set and analysis of it over the past couple of weeks, I was able to look at many buildings and structures and transportation features that would typically be impacted by by climate change, by sea level rise, things of that nature. I felt that the geodata did an excellent job of kind of highlighting those areas of risk, and it would help me kind of educate others on where those risks exist so that they can make better decisions.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. So how can we use this information and resilience planning, specifically the LiDAR and CREST interface? I think, Jay, maybe you'd take this one.
Yeah, CREST, if you're looking at resilience, CREST and the high resolution data that's available, and again, this is for resilience planning. You can get yourself to a point, and forgive me, I'm going to define resilience as the ability to quickly bounce back. You can literally, CREST itself is paired with the AgriAccept. So the data from CREST is fed into AgriAccept. So you can literally use that data and the tool to actually plan not just a year ahead, but 10 years ahead, 20, 30 years ahead. So you have a way of, mitigating, or not necessarily avoiding, but mitigating against the adverse effects had you not had the information. So it affords a great deal of planning.
Thank you very much, Jay. I see there's another question in the group asking about where they can find the app for download. I think it was specifically targeted at Kim, but I think, Jay, you should answer both in terms of CREST and AgriAccept, and Kim for fuel.
So CREST is not available for download, but it can be used via a web platform. It's available to use free of cost. We're trying to bring all the tools together. I attempted to bring all the tools together on a unified platform so persons wouldn't have to be logging into one and logging into another. So they're currently not where they should be, meaning they're not up. But if you actually access crest.mona.ue.edu, that will be the portal to access all the tools, the current tools, and the future tools that will be developed to be used to actually use the data coming out of CREST.
That includes the AgriAccept?
That includes AgriAccept. That will include SMASH, which is our simple modified vectoring storms and hurricanes, as well as RECORD, which is a regional climate observational records database, which actually gives you a climatological view, a baseline view of all the Caribbean countries. We normally have it targeted to Jamaica, and we've extended it to include Belize and Barbados. So that data should be available as well there.
All right, thank you, Jay. Kim?
Hi. Yes, I was just putting a note. Yeah, so the Fewer app, the native can be downloaded directly from the Play Store, the Android native app, and the Fewer PWA can be accessed. And I'll put I was just going to type it in, but I didn't get a chance. The PWA can be accessed from. Well, I'll put it in https://app.eua.fish. So I'll put that in the chat also. And that PWA is cross-platform. So either the native Android or the cross-platform, I'll put that in. And any further information, you're welcome to email me. And I've put my email address there too. So I'll put the PWA link right now.
All right, thank you very much, Kim. I think we can all agree that there's some very exciting and interesting work being done in the region. And I think the data collection that has been done by Fugro will go a far way to enhancing the work of development and resilience specialists, certainly in Jamaica and Haiti. So my last comment is you'll see that I'm wearing the shirt related to the project. This is from my time with the PMU, and we have 2 minutes. And so if there are any additional questions, and I'm scrolling through quickly just to see. No, there are no additional questions. That being the case, let me just take this opportunity to thank the presenters, Keith, Kim, Jayaka, very excellent presentations. I enjoyed them all. I'm very happy to see that the work by Fugro is complete. I look forward in my new capacity to gaining access to this data. And Jay, again, thank you very much for the work that you've done on the multiple platforms. And Kim, it's a pleasure to see you again. It's been a while. Anyway, at this point, I'm gonna close the session and allow you all to take a break for a second and then join back the main meeting now. All right?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, depending on where you are, good rest of